Before we talk about communicative language teaching, we have to briefly mention some other methods that you may have heard about. Alternative language teaching methods, if you want. David Union called these the designer methods of the 1970s. Here we'll mention three: Suggestopedia, the silent way, and total physical response. These methods have in common that each of them was presented by its creator as revolutionary, as the miracle method for language learning. Now, they do offer interesting insights and useful contributions, but they were not the magic formula they pretended to be. Actually, there is no miracle language learning method. And these methods also had substantial limitations. They were usually too restrictive, trying to enclose the learning process in a methodological straitjacket, and beyond their main argument, sometimes they were not so different from what they criticized. First, let's talk about Suggestopedia. Its main claim is that learning is improved by a state of relaxation. So it tends to use classical music and other external factors to promote this relaxation. The main limitation of Suggestopedia is that the supposedly impressive results it claims to produce have never been demonstrated by research, and that beyond this attention to the context, it tended to focus a lot on memorizing vocabulary and structures. So, not revolutionary in the end. Second, the silent way. Now, this method was built around cognitive principles that we can definitely agree upon. For instance, that learning gets better when learners discover by themselves or create. In other words, when they're cognitively engaged. The silent way also emphasized problem solving and using physical objects to mediate the learning process. How does it transpose to classroom teaching, though? Well, the silence way main idea is that the teacher has to remain mostly silent and let the students cooperate together to discover the rules and the meanings by themselves. Some induction is definitely good, but here it tended to be too radical. The students lacked guidance and directions from the teacher, and it was also problematic to avoid all corrections. In brief, leaving the students confused for too long was unpractical and ineffective. The last method we are going to mention is the total physical response method, or TPR. The main argument of TPR is that babies learning their first language spend a lot of time just listening and physically reacting before they start to speak. So TPR focuses mostly on listening. The teacher gives instructions and the students have to respond with movements only. Get up, take your book, eat, swim, etc. A sort of extended game of Simon Says. TPR is actually a very useful technique to use with beginners, but it can only last for a certain number of hours before either the teacher runs out of instructions or the learners get fed up with it. So again, an interesting contribution, but not the method that would solve all our problems. One more thing about TPR actually. Another method derives from it. It's called TPRS, which stands for Teaching Proficiency Through Reading and Storytelling. It's precisely an extension of the initial TPR to allow to go beyond this instructions movements phase. It mostly focuses on adding reading and storytelling through role-playing in the classroom. And it works quite well, especially with high school learners. Its main downside, however, is that, like the other innatist methods, it focuses a lot on comprehension and gives little space to production and actual interactions between the learners. And this is precisely what I think is the most valuable contribution of the current dominant language teaching method, the communicative approach, and it's that it makes the students interact together meaningfully. We'll talk about it in our next session. See you then.